Hey team, welcome to Inside the Movie Photographer with Jasin Boland. Well, today we get down to the the last episode, episode 3, bit Star Warsy, isn't it? With Brian Douglas, Susie Allnutt, Aimee Spinks, Gareth Gatrell, Chiabella James, and Jay Maidment. The 6 of us, or the 7 of us, don't often get in a room together, so it's been really, really fun for all of us. I hope you guys have enjoyed the insight into what makes us tick when we're taking a photograph, or making a photograph more to the point, and how we perform and behave on a film set. I hope you've enjoyed it so far, and this is a really, really cool app, so sit back and enjoy. Okay, so Gigi, this is now. We had a conversation about this a couple of years ago about you putting yourself on the line to go and get certified to do the underwater work.
Yeah,
and it's not an easy task where you guys are. Where I am, we don't have to have commercial rating. I just have to be with a safety diver. But you guys actually have to do commercial training, right? So you spent the bucks and spent the time to pull off these incredible images. You want to talk us through this a little bit?
yeah, absolutely. So I've dived for about 20 years, Paddy, BZAC, and technical dive. I've always been a bit of an adventure adrenaline junkie, and it only occurred to me a little while into the unit stills riders that why don't I go and get myself commercially endorsed? And even though I had these big instructor qualifications, they mean absolutely nothing. You've got to go and get a HSE part 2, or part 1, which is a 2-week intense course where, to be completely honest, do you learn much from doing the course? Probably not. You have to have that box ticked. So full-face diving, mask diving, bells, signals, that kind of stuff. But it allowed me straight away to get into the water, which is phenomenal. And I think there's only a couple of photographers in the UK that are able to, I say legally, properly operate underwater on a British film. But obviously that's different in your part of the world to what it is here in the UK. So this particular one, I was on a film called Close for Netflix, and this was shot at Pinewood, which is such a great facility here in the UK. The dive tank's phenomenal. The dive crew, safety lot, are great divers, and a great ambience. But what was happening was I was called in to shoot through the glass, basically, at the dive tank, and I got there and I just thought it's just not right. And I was very lucky that Mr. Valentine himself, who's worked on Bond, etc., was the main camera op, and I kind of sneakily went to him in a nice roundabout way and said, it's going to be a great day, isn't it? And he's, yeah, why aren't you in the water? And I said, well, I've got my certification. And he came with me to the producer, who's a lovely chap. And he was very open to trusting me, because obviously when you start hiring underwater cameras literally on that day, it wasn't a case we had time to organise it. They started filming. I had 2 hours to get a AquaTech surf housing with, I think it was a Canon 5D Mark II or something. So again, another camera system I'm not used to, because I tend to use Nikons and Fujis at the time. So again, trying to learn how to use that system really quickly was quite difficult. So there's lots of pressure. They just spent about £600 extra plus my day rate in getting this piece of kit in. And but Mike Valentine was fantastic. You've got Noomi Rapace here, the actress from Prometheus. We all know who she is. And this was obviously the female actress at the back of the shot with a stunt double at the front. And I was right beside Mike during this take. And you're not just trying to get the shot. You're trying not to knock into electrical kit. You're trying not to release any bubbles as you're shooting the frame, because obviously the underwater housings are quite large, probably a little bit bigger than an AquaTech sound blimp slightly. Obviously, you're trying to set all your settings, etc., and you're trying not to drift into Mike, although you're shoulder to shoulder. And even though you're in a pool, obviously there's circulation in the water, so you are moving. But it's just it's one of those sort of jobs that I'd love to do it, because you're at one with nature in the water, even if you're in a swimming pool. But when you get that shot, you know you've got it. And underwater, that makes it even more sweeter, because it's a difficult thing to achieve, because you're trying to crop in to make the most of the sensor. You don't want to be too far away, but at the same point, you have to be a little bit wider to get that shot. And clarity of the water plays a big part. So I will be honest and say there's lots of retouching here, because the clarity of the water that particular day just wasn't fantastic. But it was a great shot to get.
But that's what makes it with underwater photography anyway. And I use the AquaTech surf housing myself, and it's funny. I have a Huggy Fit as well, but right. I find the AquaTech ports are are better than, better than anything that I've ever used. Right up to $1,000 port. For some reason, they're sharper edge to edge. I don't know what it is, and they're acrylic too. So.
I mean, the great thing I found with AquaTech is that I use Nauticam as well, and that's a great system. The problem is they're not great for unit photographers because you're having to pressurize the systems constantly.
Yeah.
Which
and they're only at 3 meters, so it really doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the tank there's 5, but yeah, it doesn't matter. But what I found the problem, because I was hiring ink kit that day, I was having to manually set everything out of the water, jump back in. But you can do that obviously with the AquaTech. You haven't got a pressure test that you slip it in, make your settings, and you're trusting that you know your light well enough and your shutter speed's well enough to get a really good exposure. Where the Nauticam, of course, you've got a lot more creative control because you can change your white balance in the water, everything.
You must have had a different AquaTech, because I can get to all my.
Yeah, you would have probably. I guess I would have given you one, being a sponsor.
Yeah, maybe.
But obviously, we had to hire this in last second, so it was a case of what exactly we did with the Jacobsen blimp, like Jay did earlier. The AquaTech. You'd unflip the back, you'd quickly put your settings in. It's almost a case that I was in the water, sort of outside the water, looking in, trying to make the settings up in my head as you do old school. And that would be the case. But yeah, great shot. Got really lucky, and she was amazing to work with.
I love it, and I love how the chains sort of flow in with the bubbles too. It's really cool.
Oh man,
I've got the have a look on a big screen.
I mean, moving on. Mark Strong. Wow,
Strong.
What a gentleman. Very fortunate to work with this man on a Sky show called Temple. With Noel Daniels got me in to cover, actually to take over from their internal house shooter. And Mark was just phenomenal. He's one of those guys that if you ask for a moment, which you don't try to do too often, so I think, as we all say, is that you capture the real emotion of a scene when the cameras are rolling, trying to get people to reset. Sometimes you don't get the actor to give the same emotion. But Mark, the producer, told me exactly what he wanted that day. I wasn't getting it, so I approached Mark. And he's a very intelligent actor. He's the type of guy that will, and what you said earlier, Jason, is that you've got to make sure you want that particular shot. Because what my experience with Mark was, is very, very approachable, but he'd ask you, why do you need this? How's it being used? And I kind of enjoyed that, because before you even step up, you know exactly why you're going to be taking the shot. And I think this one worked really well for the editorial for the show. And again, I turned it black and white. The colour version is just as rich, but the black and white for me, it's always got that kind of special place in your heart.
Oh, pretty.
Yeah, World on Fire, man. I'm very, very fortunate on this one. This was a BBC show which came out beginning part of last year, and you never know what the reason is for a photographer being asked to leave or drop from a show. This was shot in Prague with Milk Publicity, and there was a photographer on site, and it just didn't work out for some reason. So I got a chance to fly out for 5 days. And again, very similar to what Aimee said about Outlander, is that it wasn't like a nice steady Eddie kind of, let's get you in. It's right, we're going to shoot this today. We've got 250 extras. We've got a crane coming in here. We've got cars moving. So it was all that kind of thing. But you've got to get the shot. That they're not going to reset it, because there's just not the time, because time's money. In television, I tend to find things work a lot quicker than my experience in film. But it was a great day. The costumes, again, you just can't go wrong. And these two actors are just phenomenal. Very new talent, but I'm sure they're going to fly. But it was a great experience. I mean, Prague's beautiful. You can't go wrong. Now, I chose this shot. This was taken a long time ago on some sort of indie feature that I did called Lucy with Billy Zane. And even though the actress isn't known, it's one of those shots that just happens. You get the right angle, which covers the light to give you that little bit of glare, and that's what
the flare makes the whole image. It's just fantastic.
It's just that thing, isn't it? I think when you're on set, you can't move too much being a photographer. Once you're locked in, as Aimee said. But you just sometimes know if there's a backlight there. There's a light coming through, and when it's blocked at the right moment, at the right time, you've got your finger on that trigger. It just kind of makes the whole shot. But that was shot in a small man's club somewhere in North London. It's I love it.
Great stuff. I like your framing too, off center and,
I got told off that.
You what? Told off for it?
I got told off that once. So what was it for? No, not told off, but Bowens. You remember Bowens flash equipment?
Yeah.
Well, I still use that stuff, man, because it's robust, and I drop a lot of stuff, so it bounces well. And Bowens at the time, when they were doing really well, started to basically sponsor me, gave me 6 heads, and it wasn't so much of a telling off, but they didn't quite understand some of the framing that I was doing. So, the rule of thirds.
Yeah.
I just go wherever the shot looks good. Do you know what I mean? I'm not calculating it, man. I'm just going with the flow of it, and the energy just sent right. And just like you said, I think that light coming through there, the flare just makes it.
Yeah, totally. That's a handsome shot.
This man is. If I tell you what, there's not. And again, I'm very sort of early on to the journey, but there's not many people that I get not flustered, but have a moment of, oh my God. So obviously watching Con Air as a kid, and there he is, John Malkovich. And on TV, these actors are, are taller than they are, and then you realise when you go on set, actually they're not as tall as you think they are. And John Malkovich, man, what a frame! The man is just a solid iron frame. Do you know? You meet him, he was very quiet, very reserved. This particular day, I was only there for one day, and I think Aimee worked on this one as well, didn't you, Aimee?
Yeah, I popped in for a day on that as well. Yeah, he's very, very interesting guy to work with. Very, very cool, just the way he looks down the lens.
He's just got that kind of oh God, I want to be you kind of energy. And what was really interesting, which the shot doesn't show, which is a shame, is that I knew I had to get a couple of these portraits because Milk Publicity, again, who employed me to do this, said we really need some strong portraits. And of course, it was a great backdrop. It was overcast day, which is, as photographers, you always want that little bit more grit. And it started pouring down the rain. I'm not even just talking trickling, but pouring. And there's that awful moment in your chest where you just know you've got to ask for the shot. But is he going to step out into the rain? Literally, I just walked up to him. We'd known each other we spoke twice, about an hour, and just, John, would you mind stepping out so I can get this shot over here? Blah, 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 blah. He just nodded really coolly, stepped out, and I've never seen hair and makeup move so quickly with umbrellas. And all he did was this: push the umbrellas away, slowly walked to the spot, stood there, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I always try to keep it quick, and if the shot's not working, I just still make it quick. I'm not going to stand there and try to make something work that I know is not working. But at that time, everything connected really well. And on the same day, I lost one of my Fuji bodies, got flooded. So that's how bad it was raining. Absolutely, just a top guy. And after that as well, there was 2 other occasions, and it's 3 portrait moments that he stepped out into the rain each time. And honestly, as he walked away each time, hair and makeup tried to put an umbrella over him. Just old school raw iron actor. Fantastic.
Wow. Yeah, there's your action.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So this was really interesting because I think Christian Black was the main photographer for American Assassin, and I got a phone call basically to make 2 cover days here in the UK because obviously I had to reshoot a few bits and pieces. So I get a chance to go to Shepperton, and of course, you know what it's like. I think Susie mentioned something very similar earlier: is that you walk into the studio and suddenly you think of this big hangar. Oh man, this is going to be such a day. Then you walk through the door, and there's this little tiny kind of box thing on a hydraulic system in the back, and you're walking close, and there's a first AD called Terry Bamber walks over, introduces himself, I'll say hello. Just out of interest here, where are we shooting today? And he points to the box. So of course, thinking, oh man. Okay, anyway, so what will happen is you've got Taylor Quiche and we've got Dylan O'Brien, American Assassin. There's literally, we're in a small interior of a boat, which is no bigger than, I'd probably say it was 4 meters long by 2.5 meters wide max. You've got 2 cameras filming crossover in the corner, 2 focus pullers sat on the bench behind them, and then you've got your boom operator in. And I was like, oh my God, man, if it's, how am I going to get something? Day one, you'll think, oh, and this is where my snobby behavior or thought process with regards to the LCD screen of the Fuji completely changed my life, because there's no way I would have managed to have got anything at all without that flip screen. So I was sat about 3 foot above the ground, balancing quite tightly in the corner between 2 camera operators and the focus pullers with the screen flipped, trying to hold that as low as possible to the floor. And then these 2 guys just kick off, and the energy between the both of them, Taylor Quiche, his energy was phenomenal. This looks like it's been sort of reset perhaps, but it hasn't. It's completely in camera. The action that they both gave, they're bouncing around the inside of this wall. The two cameras are obviously just being held on the shoulder rigs, just bouncing all over the show. Of course, you know, it's like you're trying to watch your two operators. You've got your focus pullers, because they're obviously moving backwards and forwards as well. You've got the boom thing sticking in. You try not to get that in shot. And without the LCD screen, I just would not have got anything. If it had been the blimp, it just wouldn't have happened. So that's where my love of the LCD screen sort of began, especially for the Fuji system. It was just a great energy, and it was a great day. And Michael Quester was the director on this one, and when I showed him that shot, he was very happy, and I was very relieved.
No, that's the thing about the mirrorless. You can shove them into spots that you just can't get your big head. It's awesome.
Absolutely. And I'm pretty nimble. Like Aimee, I try to keep myself fit. But that was tight, man. It was a tight day.
Did you shoot raw?
And you managed to shoot it before everything fell off the Fuji.
Yeah, imagine. I absolutely love the Fuji. The problem with Fuji is, and Jay, we had a conversation, I think, some months ago, maybe last year, about the Fuji, is that they just fall apart. And it's a shame, because I just love the way they hold in the hand. I do find the raw files a bit more cinematic when they come straight out of the camera. But the build quality suffers a little tiny bit. Or I would have stayed with them, plus also the focusing, man. But you pay for what you get.
Again.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Waiting.
Okay, stopping.
What did
Right.
they say?
You're doing so well.
No, it was me. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, because it was so good too. All right, and give me a count in.
My acting skills. Oh, like all the way to the beginning?
Yeah. I'm going to intro it again.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Sorry, guys. It's going to sound really fake.
No. It was my fault. It was something that happened to Ian. Hey, so Chia, this image is absolutely rad, and with the appetite that people have now for BTS, I mean, I could look at this for a month of Sundays and still find more to look at. Talk us through it.
The Where's Waldo of BTS.
Yeah, right.
So my kind of image choices today are a little different from everybody's, as I'm realizing so far, in that a lot of my favorite images aren't released, so I can't share them, unfortunately. So I picked my images based on personal story behind them. And this one for me, I wasn't even hired as the photographer on the show. It was David James, who's the photographer. And I had spent a decade trying not to follow in his footsteps, just because of the sheer fear of it. And I'd moved countries. I was in England working in a pub trying to decide what was going to make me happy and what was worth pursuing. And he needed some help on covering everything on Force Awakens, just because of the sheer volume and beast of what those shows are with the franchise, and every nook and cranny needs to be covered. So this was a day where he's in there somewhere shooting the scene. And I grabbed a second camera and went up to the hill to try and capture the sort of scale of what this day of shooting was for us. With the Falcon being brought into a location and everything, and the whole crew. And you've got the special effects. You've got this whole kind of snow globe in the middle there. It ended up becoming an image that not only made it to the filmmaker selects, but it ended up being published. And it was really, for me, the kind of defining moment where I sat back and went, okay, I guess this is where I should be and what I should be doing. So it was really kind of personally the image that made me realize I was gonna be following in those footsteps and taking this on as a career.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Jay and I were talking about this image earlier today, and he was saying about you want to put this in your SMPSP app. Right, Jay?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, if you only put in a couple of images in your application, this definitely has to go in.
New one, huh? Okay. Noted, sir.
As we've spoken many times about this already, it's about storytelling, and it's about having one image, because clearly that's all we do is to capture one image that can tell a story or sum up a scene, and this completely sums up the whole thing, sums up the whole filmmaking process on a Star Wars film.
Yeah.
End of. So, yeah, I would definitely put that one in.
Okay. I'll be saving that one to a special folder.
No, it's great.
Oh, look at that. Ooh,
That is sweet.
So
that's great.
this was from The Mummy.
Wow.
Not the most, not the easiest shoot. And probably, I'm trying to think, I think it was the first full feature. So rather than doing additional photography or coming in and covering, it was the first full feature that I shot solo. And I love this picture. Obviously, it's beautifully lit, and the set was so cool. We had this massive tomb set that is quite hard to photograph in 2D. At least the cameras can move around, and you really get a sense of the scale. Whereas we get one frame to really show not just the action and the light and the beauty of it, but also the scale of this production design. So I had the most of the crew were to my right, and just in where the light shines through the smoke on the left corner of the frame, the gaffer was standing. And obviously he needs to be able to see what's happening during the take, and he needs a good view of it. So that was where he found he was going to stand and watch the take. And I could see this moment, but I knew that I was either going to have to take him out or just ask him to step back 2 feet. And I don't know what experience he had with stills before me, but he wasn't happy about it. When I just kind of very politely said, "Would you mind just 2 feet backwards?" And at first he just sort of looked me up and down like, "Who are you? What do you want? Get out of my way." And I didn't leave it be. I nudged nicely again. Just please, just 2 feet, just a little bit more. So he finally just stepped back, and he really gave me a foot. He stepped back just enough that I could kind of trim him out. And the second I shot it and they yelled cut, I went over and I showed it to him. And bless him, he looked at the frame and he kind of looked up at me and he went, "Oh, that's a pretty good shot." And I was like, "Yes, thank you so much for just backing up that 1 foot." He was a dream for me for the rest of the show, an absolute dream. So, it really is about the people around you. It really is about kind of communicating with them and also showing them what you do. I think so many people see us functioning on set and they never get to see 90% of what we're doing, and by the time they do see it on a billboard one day, the association with us as an individual is gone. It's a year later sometimes. So I really think that our relationship with the crew around us is a massive part of getting images like that. So this is in the middle is Rebecca, who is a dear friend of mine. And this was taken in New Orleans on a 1968 Canon, black and white film.
Nice.
Last year, I picked up a film camera in over a decade, I have to admit. And I...
No, just come back to me.
I was working with a DP, Greg Fraser, who is incredible, and he was shooting every day with these like funky, old, messed up film cameras, to the point where he was like, "I don't even know what frames will work or what won't, but it's fun." It just lit something in me. And he and I went to a little shop in Budapest, and I bought this old 1968 Canon and some rolls of film, and just started playing again. Because when I pick up one of my work cameras away from work, I feel like I go into the mentality of I start listing, okay, I got to get my tight shot, I got to get my wide shot, and it just becomes work in my head instinctively. Whereas with the film camera, or even the iPhone sometimes, I get a little more creative, I play a little bit more, it becomes a bit more fun, just for my own purposes. And New Orleans is one of my favorite cities in the whole world. It's one of the few places I've spent months on location, and I still want to go back. And And this is a tiny, tiny little museum. It's the Mardi Gras Museum. And if any of you are in New Orleans, you have to go and check it out. It's above Arnaud's French 75 restaurant. And you have to go into the restaurant and ask them to point you in the direction of this little museum. And it's upstairs. It's minuscule. And it's all these really creepy mannequins with the old-fashioned Mardi Gras costumes. It's absolutely divine. And it's as you walk around the corner, it's all kind of encased in glass. And she just walked around the corner and she just sort of seemed to blend into the mannequins and look back at me, and I just managed to catch it, and I just love it.
I love it too. That's awesome. Love that.
Great moment.
So this is June, right? All these images, wasn't this in a Vanity Fair spread?
Yeah, this has just come out
That's
a couple
cool.
of weeks ago, and one of the most incredible filmmaking experiences I have ever had, from every single cast member to filmmaker, DP, director, studio. It was literally a love fest on set. I mean, it was the most zen, beautiful experience I've ever been a part of. Like, to the point where none of us wanted to leave. We just wanted to keep shooting. So these images came out last week, and I've never had such a strong response from kind of fans around the world. You know, normally they don't really know who shot the image. They're more excited about who's in them. Based on current times, people have really reached out and kind of been grateful for the sort of, I guess, the scope of the images and the hope of seeing them in movie theaters, and saying it's, you know, kind of made their day or made their week, which has been a really emotional factor for me. I've never really felt that tied to the marketing process. You know, you turn in your images at the end of the show, and then eventually you see what they've picked, but you're sort of detached from it by then. Whereas this one, I feel like I'm still part of the process in a really kind of touching way, which is incredible. And I, you know, of the images that have been released, I picked this one specifically because the world seems to be going crazy for Sexy Oscar, who I'm incredibly grateful to as an actor. He's one of these that, you know, in this shot specifically, the camera is to the side of me. He's turning to look back at the camera. And on the first take, he does so, but he's obviously, you know, along the way, he has spotted me in my little kind of nook and cranny that I've managed to find it was a very tight set, so in the middle of everybody. And so on the second take, rather than kind of scanning over me or ignoring me or just kind of tuning me out, he's made a point of scanning his eyes past my lens, which gives me an opportunity to get character shot to camera, which can be rare, and you know, you don't always have time to ask them to recreate it, or so he sort of gave me a freebie there.
It's a super strong character shot. There's no denying that. It's
too.
And Vanity Fair. I don't think I've had a Vanity Fair spread. That's
I'm not gonna lie. There's something. Yeah, I haven't said this out loud yet, and I'm gonna take your cue for even bringing that up. I don't think I have either, especially as a first look, and credited. So I don't know what's going on over there, if they're changing their ways. But yeah, honoured to have that be the case. It felt like a very small win as a unit photographer.
Well, Legendary. I mean, I don't know how many other of us have worked for Legendary, but they do incredible marketing campaigns, and they use a lot of images, and the stuff that I've always done for them. It's a real treat for a still photographer to have that exposure.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. And yeah, great stuff. TC, top cat.
Okay, this photograph makes me want to cry. This image put me on the map. It defined me from the footsteps I was following in. I was shooting alongside David James on, this one was on Rogue Nation. And we were shooting down by the Tower of London, nights in the winter, miserable. And David had fallen ill, and the benefit of having two of us on set meant he could actually stay home and rest and get better for a couple of days, and I could cover the set for him. So, we thought, no big deal. It's just a couple of days. Nothing big's going to happen. We already got what we need. And then they decided to do this scene, which is a kind of pivotal moment where Rebecca and Tom both stand up and they, kind of twist around each other to shoot at the bad guys. And it was quite a complicated thing to shoot. And they set up these two tracks, so two cameras tracking in at them at the same time and nearly crossing. I think they just met at the very end. Our director yelled out, "Dave James!" Silence. He wasn't there, and I just froze, knowing that was coming my way. And somebody kind of quietly pointed out to him, David's not here today, but Chia's here. Yeah, Chia! I'm like, okay, I'm here. Sorry, what can I do? And he pointed at, they'd frozen the rehearsal on his monitor, and he pointed at this, and he's like, "That is the shot that I want." So everybody, the whole crew heard this. So I go in there and I'm looking at where that shot is. No pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's set for a camera. There's no safe place for me to be to even get close to getting that image, other than doing a take, and that was not going to happen. And I come back to the crew around us. I have to give credit to Andrew Rowlands, who was the camera operator, who kind of looked at my scenario and went, "Hop on." So while he's sitting and being tracked in and holding onto the camera on his shoulder, he's got me standing on the dolly behind him with my knees tucked into his armpits to kind of get the grip, shooting just over his head with two grips holding me on the side while they running in while we tracked him.
That's amazing.
Unbelievable.
Because Andrew looked at me afterwards and was like, "I hope you got it, because we're not doing that again." And the director came over and was like, "Let me see." And I'm like scrolling, because obviously I'm like, as many as I can, many frames as I can to make sure I got it. And I've got him over my shoulder looking at every frame. And it's like, okay, there it is.
Cool.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Pretty much collapsed after that.
That's
but
classic.
It ended up being the first released image for the film, and again was and credited, and it was kind of the image that made filmmakers then take note and go, "Okay, yeah, she's got the chops for hire." So, and as a result, the lovely lady in it has become one of my closest friends. So it has a whole lot of meaning for me, this picture.
The first step to stealing the crown.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was sick for one day.
That's how it happened.
Oh.
Okay, BD, man, I look at your music stuff and my heart just melts. I mean, I remember seeing this image when it first came out, and it's just like, this is so rad.
Thanks. It honestly was my very first studio film. And it was on a camera test day where they had me shooting a lot of, they wanted a first look of Don. That's Don Cheadle, is Miles Davis. They wanted a first look of him because he was going to be directing as well. And they wanted a good shot of him in character to release as a first look. They didn't tell me exactly where all it was going to go, but that ended up being everywhere. And it was actually one of the very first images I shot on my first real film. It was shot that basically in a closet, tiny little room. And he is such a kind, giving, generous, talented guy. He's absolutely, I owe a lot of my, whatever I am, to that guy right there. He's a sweetheart. That ended up being a full page in Entertainment Weekly and USA Today and Times and a bunch of other places. But it was shot, as you guys know, a lot of times some of the cool little gallery moments or portrait moments come in tight little spaces, and that was for sure one of them. And there were, like, honestly, like, he came over and was looking at the images, and there's a ton of keepers, but that's the one they chose. And I didn't know any better at the time. I did the color grading on it, and they used it that way. So I was like, I didn't know any better. I was just, doing it. And I was quite thrilled and very thankful that they used that one.
It's gorgeous.
Man, it's an image to be proud of. It's so powerful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me.
And I mean, see, this is it. This is the whole framing thing again. Oh my God.
Well,
Beautiful.
thank you. And this is one of those things, you know, people say sometimes, don't you get bored standing around on set? And I'm like, I don't just stand around on set. I'm usually looking for something. I can't say 100% of the time, but most of the time I'm looking for. This shot was in between takes. I saw him start from one side of the stage coming across. I saw the light still there, and I waited until he walked through the light to reset for the shot, and I just snapped it. He was actually walking across the stage. That photo ended up being the New York Film Festival poster for that year.
Nice.
And again, maybe I peaked too early. There's a lot of Miles Ahead stuff in here. That was the film. It was about Miles Davis. But Don, he's such. If you haven't worked with him, I hope you get the opportunity to, because he's just such a loving, giving guy and a genius actor.
Yeah, you can just see it. He's just so into it, so deep.
It's the Black Keys.
Yeah, right.
So this was my former life. I for 30 years, over 30 years, I worked in radio as a presenter and as a music director. And but I shot all my life. I just love music and photography, and so I had a lot of music clients, management firms, and bands and things like that. And my youngest went away to university, to college, and I decided it was time to start making my way. I wanted to do something different, something new. I had this amazing, very thankful for amazing career in radio for a long, long time. But I don't know, I reached out to you, Jasin. I reached out to like 4 or 5 other people and just said, hey, here's my deal. What do you think? And you were so encouraging. And whatever. Listen to you. No, you have been there for me so many times,
That's very sweet.
It's the truth, though. I remember having a terribly bad day, or I think maybe everybody's had one, where you just walk away from set going, man, nothing clicked, or I didn't get that one image where I just went, wow. And I remember emailing you after I got back to the hotel and was downloading images, and I said, Jasin, do you ever have bad days at this point in your career? And I can't really quote you exactly, but it was basically, he reassured me that I was okay. And it meant, it meant the world to me. And I remember you telling me too, even when you think you've had a tough day, you'll end up finding something. And I did. It ended up being a great day. But anyway, I shot a lot of music in my day, and it's something I just love doing. I don't get to do it much anymore because of, we're busy doing films. But it's a rush for sure.
It's such a stellar shot. And I'm so lucky because I've got a big EZO monitor behind me. So every time I'm looking up, it's because I'm looking up at all of your glorious images, massive on my screen. There, no, I love that shot. It's got a lot of passion, and music is very similar to shooting. Actors. I mean, it's a performance, and we're after. I always sit there and say that I'm after the director's performance. I don't like doing setups because I feel like they suck the life out of an image. And live. That's it. It's a live performance.
Yeah, it's about that moment. That lasts for a nanosecond. That we all hopefully, compose and do all the math in our head and click and feel it. And it's, that was one of those moments for me. I really enjoyed that one. That was a great show.
And this is the same passion for me.
This is from the Ted Bundy movie for Netflix, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil.
Oh my God, yes. How good is that movie?
Very well done. Joe Berlinger. He's a documentarian, award-winning documentarian. He directed this film.
That's why it has that whole realism to it.
Yes. And it was a dream shoot. It was one of those, we come together like this little circus, and we see familiar faces, but you're never with the exact same crew, or at least my experience. Yeah. But this is one of those crews and experiences with the talent and the director and everything else, the DP, that I would just love to pick up and take to the next show. Zach couldn't have been more giving. I mean, he told me, you can be anywhere you want, anytime. And how many times do we hear that, right?
Love that.
And he was a absolute dream. That's Lily Collins, who is also a fantastic actor and a sweetheart. And they both were just giving. John Malkovich was in this movie, Jim Parsons from Big Bang, and James Hetfield from Metallica even has a scene in this movie. But that was just a cool little scene in a dumpy little dive bar that ended up being one of the first images they released from the film.
Yeah, I kind of fell upon that movie a little bit by accident. I don't know, I was just looking for something to watch. And I started watching it. I think it was on an airplane, actually. And oh my God, I couldn't stop. It was just insane. And it was like, but you really like the guy. That's the scary part.
And, in talking to Joe and the people who had done a ton of research on this, that's the reason this psychopath was able to get away with what he was able to get away with for many years, is that he was so charming and a handsome guy. And he did some horrible, horrible things, but he's no longer with us.
Yes. Happy days. So where are you?
I'm on the far...
Is this you here?
Way over on the end. I'm the guy in the blue shirt and that's me at a concert. See how easy it is to shoot? There's probably 15 people in the pit there, and you're in there for 3 songs. Some of you may have shot music before, but usually there for 2 or 3 songs, and it's just, sort of like on set too. Sometimes it's a bit of a dance that we do, with other crew members to get the shot but not be in the way. And but yeah, that's one of my work shots.
Like with all the social media photographers.
Yes. That's one of the I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're there for 2 or 3 songs. Do you then rotate out? Are there other photographers?
No, that's the one thing. Everybody goes in at the same time.
Right.
The ones that are really crazy, and you guys have amazing festivals in the UK, is I used to shoot like Lollapalooza here and some other big festivals, but you have 50 photographers in a pit. And it just got to the point where you would see cell phones in there and everything else. And it was just like, why am I doing this? I'm killing myself in here. And another quick thing about music photography, a lot of people say you can't make money with music. And I quickly learned anytime there was a logo or an instrument or anything like that, I shot it, because there's a million websites and magazines, music with awful photos in them of their gear. And I very quickly learned how to monetize my music photography.
Smart boy.
You gotta hustle, we're always hustling.
Brian, I think everyone at the moment is like going, let Brian keep talking because he's got a voice like maple syrup.
If I start to drop out of the screen, you'll know why.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, everyone's got showy eyes.
Way too kind.
Look, man. You should be doing every music movie ever.
Oh, well, again, this was my first studio film. I may have peaked too early, but like Jay and as others have mentioned, I'm a sucker for black and white. I love black and white, and it just felt like a black and white image to me, so I took it that way. Again, it was right before we started rolling. Moments before we started rolling, and I shot this and a few other images, but I don't know. I'm a sucker for black and white. I like the smoke like that, and he looks cool.
Yeah, he looks really cool. I love it. Man, what beautiful, beautiful work. So this is Matrix, which is probably, we're talking about defining films and images. This is, for me, probably my defining film. And this is, we shot this scene for like 3 or 4 weeks of Neo and Smith duking it out in the rain. And it was so heavy, this rain. We used to call it the chubby rain. And I just used my my F4, and I just had like a normal little rain cover over it. It was pretty funny, actually. But yeah, it was like, we talk about those defining films. Like for me, as a young photographer, for many years, I could have just had a 1-line resume with, The Matrix on it. And I think I still would have got hired. But that's me at work. See, I thought everyone was doing pictures of themselves at work.
Not everyone can do that.
This is on Mad Max. It's to fall from there. It's 493 meters, but obviously the truss is on it's on the edge of the cliff. But I had to abseil down to get onto this and then climb up onto that, and I think it was about 15 or 20 meters of just truss. But it was a shitty shot, but I got a great shot of myself. So
that's the kind of workshop we all want.
So this is now when I was a newspaper photographer when I was younger, and I worked for South China Morning Post in Hong Kong, and I did all the riots in Korea and a whole lot of stuff in Philippines and that. And my heroes were always those Vietnam War photographers. And one of those heroes was Tim Page. And so I channeled a lot of him, and I ended up meeting him actually on this, and we've now become really tight friends. But I shot this at a 15th of a second because I wanted to get some movement in the body bag down here, and obviously in the helicopter as it took off. But he likes it, and I kind of like it, and it was one of those things.
I
Amazing.
love the movement in the trousers on the guy standing next to the helicopter.
Yeah, right.
You can feel it.
Yeah, yeah. And then this is my man, who I work with quite a lot. This is a film that we just finished. This is Extraction, which has just been released on Netflix, which has actually gone crazy. But I work a lot with Chris, and he's 100%er, man. He's just like gives it everything. But this is him at the end of his last take of the film. He's thoroughly exhausted, and he's just like throwing his arms up. It's like, yo, and yeah, I kind of like it because it's like he's knackered. Look at it in his face. You can just see that he's just given it everything. And I like those moments with, actors that have, when you've got an actor like him and really great directors like, you guys were talking about before, it makes the crew work harder, and you don't want to let them down. And, I just love being on a film set. I think this is my last one. Oh, so this is me. This is what I used to do.
Wow.
Whoa.
So this guy down here, he's had his mask ripped off by one of the students or the dissidents in South Korea, and it was the very first day ever that the riot police had been overthrown by the students. And I remember I was really young. I was like 19 or 20 or something, and it was my job to find out where all the action was going on. And I was told that it was at Lotte Square in Seoul. And so I told the other journos, right, okay, my intel from the university is here. It's going to be at 12 o'clock, and it's going to be on. So we go around there, and we're waiting in the square, and 12 o'clock comes along, and the guy's like, yeah, I think you got some bad intel there, kid. And I'm like, yeah, well, and then no shit, like 5 seconds later, 50,000 students come flying out of all the different exits of the underground and overtook them. And I think I was shooting a Nikomat FT2, or I'm pretty sure it was an FT2. It was 87, so it might have been an F. But this guy here with the mask, so I've taken this frame, and he's turned around and he's seen me, and he started going, no photo, no photo. Crocodile Dundee, he has pulled out a penknife, which I swear to God was as big as my pinky, and he's like holding it at me, and I just laughed. I was so embarrassed for him. But but yeah, he pulled a knife on me that day. But anyway,
Wow.
so there you go.
Anything for the shot, right?
Aiming for the shot. But
Amazing. Amazing.
that was the
image.
front page of International Herald Tribune and all these newspapers that day. My mum and dad were on the way. I was working in Hong Kong for the South China Morning Post, and my mum and dad were in Europe, and they were on the way flying to see me, and they got the newspaper and they saw my credit down below, and they're like, well, I guess Jason's not in Hong Kong. So yeah, it was funny days.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
So there you go. That's,
Beautiful.
Bit of my background. Team, how much fun did we have tonight?
This is great.
Right.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
Jason and Brian.
Sorry?
Thanks for that. That was really interesting.
Well, you can thank Brian. He was like, it was his idea, and then I hijacked it, thinking, "Oh, hold on, we might end up having this really good conversation that will go at the end of it, going, damn it, we should have recorded that."
Right.
Brian, who has changed locations since the beginning of this conversation.
Yes. Continuity would be bad. But no, thank you. This was so much fun. Thanks for doing this, everybody.
Oh, it's nice. It's just nice
Thank you.
to know what we love doing. It's given me a little lift. Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
that's so
Thank
You know,
cool.
you're a one-man band so much that it's nice to feel like you're actually part of a team.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, team, there you have it. Episode 3 of 5 Photo Folio, and our chat with some stellar photographers. You know, Brian Douglas, his work in the music industry is just astounding, as you've seen. Susie Allnutt. Susie's been the Bond photographer for a long time for the Action Unit. Aimee Spinks, she's been doing some fantastic work in the UK in film and television, along with Gareth Gatrell. Gareth is the underwater man, as you've seen, and it was really insightful to hear what you have to go through to even get in the water over there. Chiabella James. Chiabella, well, as you know, she comes from film still royalty. Her father, David James, is one of the original trailblazers. And then you got Jay Maidment, who I look up to a great deal. Jay's and my careers have gone a little bit parallel, working on the films and the action films that we do. So it was just, for me, amazing to sit in the same room as all 6. And as I said, you know, it's not very often that we get together as photographers, because we are a one-person show. We're a department of one. So it's really exciting to chat and, you know, get some insight for myself into that I'm doing the right thing. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I've walked away from this with 6 brand new friends that I'm going to hold dearly here. We're going to do more 5 Photo Folio, and we're going to do more interviews. So please subscribe and please ding the bell so that you can be notified next time we're up. Hey team, have a great week, and thanks for watching. Cheers.